Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending our Outsmarting Ransomware with Arcserve webinar. My name is Kervin Myrtle, and I'm a Market Development Specialist here at Ingram Micro. Today, I'll be joined by none other than Gary Sussman, our Principal Consultant for Arcserve. As most of you know, at the end of this presentation, we'll be giving away a $100 Amazon gift card to the person who asked the best question. How do you do this exactly? Simple. As the presentation is going on, type your question along with your name at any moment, and at the end, we'll answer them. In fact, I actually encourage you ask your questions throughout the presentations while it's still fresh in your minds. Now, speaking of questions, I have a poll question for you guys to kick things off. What questions do you get from customers about ransomware? So if you take a look right on the screen, the question will pop up. So go right along and answer that for us. Today I'll be talking about who Arcserve is, briefly, and then we're going to go into the current market challenges, and that's pretty much essentially why we're discussing ransomware in the first place, followed by outsmarting ransomware and how to do that. So Gary's going to provide some best practices to help prevent against ransomware. Followed by that, I'll inform you guys about a couple key resources, such as the partner portal, and then the moment you guys all dream of, the questions and the gift card giveaway. Who are we? Arcserve. So Arcserve eliminates data loss from cloud, virtual, and physical environments. When you think Arcserve, you should think enterprise power, small team simple. What does that mean? We have an enterprise-grade data protection capabilities into a single, easily deployable solution for businesses of all sizes. Who doesn't like simplicity, right? Arcserve has 25 years of experience and are no longer part of CA and have been independent since 2014, so going about 3 years now. Not only do we think the solution is the greatest, but so does the IT industry, which can be proven by all the awards they've won within the last 3 years. What's a solution without the ability to work and integrate with other vendors? We're continuing to grow in our relationships with major vendors such as HPE, Nimble Storage, Microsoft, NetApp, Amazon Web Services, and many more. Why is that, you ask? Well, because we have a history and we are simple to work with. And who doesn't like simplicity? So we're now going to discuss the market challenges. Now, with the invention of cloud computing and Internet of Things, our industry has gone through massive amounts of changes. The amount of data the companies need to back up and safeguard has grown exponentially. Furthermore, Gartner research suggests that 1/3 of organizations will change their backup solutions because their current solutions is just too expensive, too complex, and doesn't meet their business needs. That's where the new Arcserve comes in. The main question of the hour is, why are we talking about this? And essentially, what's the big deal? Now, this issue is incredibly relevant and is going on right now as we speak. Out of everyone who gets hit with ransomware, 60% of them actually end up paying the ransom. In 2015, a ransom amount of $209 million was paid. In 2016, $325 million was paid. So you see right here that it continues to grow and be a problem. Now, if you think about security products, no security product is 100% foolproof. Why not have something back up your data in case something slips through the cracks? How much more peace of mind would you have if you had something like that? Some places that are being attacked and targeted are hospitals, police stations, and schools. Vital places that we honestly can't afford to have issues in when we think about all the people that can be affected by it. Now, with that being said, Gary's going to give some best practices on how to help with this.
All right, thank you. Let's get started. First, I'd like to go over sort of how do organizations get infected? How are these, malware, these exports getting in? Basically, two ways. Simple enough: email and websites. Obviously, emails, you get content. Sometimes attachments are attached. This is a great way of getting the solutions, the malware inside organizations via email. Customers aren't aware the attachment. They click on it, executable is launched, and bang, the infection is launched. Also, they may go out to the web and may not know websites that familiar on these websites that are out there. Click on links that they're not supposed to, and again, this is how their environment can get compromised by these attacks. So, email and web internet traffic are very well how these infections occur today. So let's talk about best practices. The first step is education. I say knowledge is power. And so educating your folks on behaviors, things to look for, can definitely prevent these attacks from happening. 97% education would stop these infections and threats from being distributed by just knowing, what to look for. Number one, email. Knowing what attachments, what you're getting. Make sure that the people that are sending your emails, you know that these emails are legitimate. Last thing you're going to do is click on an attachment or open a document that you don't know. So be aware of who your email comes from. Make sure if there is an attachment that you do a scan. Just don't open up every attachment that comes into the organization. Passwords. Passwords are also ways to protect your investments, your environment, getting into your network, your emails, your computers. So keeping best practice for email is also something you should think about. It should be long, 8 characters or more, and should be updated rather frequently. Mobile devices, securing them, making sure that they have tags on them, make sure they are also password, make sure that they're secure when you're traveling. If you're going out to a restaurant, make sure you put your laptops in the trunk of the car. These are sort of things that to keep in mind. So again, they are not compromised as well. Firewalls, security on your routers. All that, again, you need to keep in mind and make sure that they are, always up to date with the latest and greatest, especially if you have other standards, regulations like HIPAA. So there are also standardized best practices that they also tend to document. So be sure that if you're under these different regulations that you know what's to be done and kept in order. So education is the number one way to stop these attacks from occurring. So knowledge is power, so make sure that you enforce these rules and regulations in your organization today. Second is obviously security. Educating people will definitely help, but if indeed the attack gets in, having multi-layer defense is the best way as for a strategy with this. This involves obviously everything from your antivirus at your endpoints. You can even involve protection at the host level. There's behavioral type of solutions out there, not just these subscriptions, but these attacks can also be stopped by behavioral solutions out there, intrusion detection, intrusion host protection. Making sure that your systems are patched also is highly recommended. As new versions of operating systems or applications comes out, they may leave your systems vulnerable. So making sure that your systems are patched with the latest and greatest is highly recommended. Also, managing remote devices like USB devices, you should probably have some type of standard in your organization whether or not to have these devices utilized. There are software that prevents USB devices. So just keep in mind that these are things to keep in thought of as you implement the solutions. Email, Obviously, you have your spam filter, your internet connections can have obviously your whitelist, blacklist from a web browsing perspective. So these are all things that you can incorporate to get a multi-layer defense. So if you're protected in many different ways, that's the whole idea here. So endpoint security is the second best practice in trying to eliminate these threats from coming in and obviously taking over your data. The third and last best practice is probably why we're here, and what we'll talk about most is having a solid solution for backup. Think of it like an insurance policy. You have all this critical data. Having a solution like backup, like Arcserve, can be placed to provide a way to protect that investment. So, it's good to have a solution in place to protect your investment, and the solution also should be encompasses what you're trying to accomplish as far as a recovery point and recovery time objective. So, there's many solutions out there. Some are file-based, some are image-based. Make sure you pick the right type of solution for your organization. And so some of these best practices, as a primary task, you should always protect your solutions, your servers, your workstations, whether it's physical, virtual. We have the capability of protecting these endpoints, and so if there's an infection, obviously we have a way to recover from them. So we should have a strategy in place to protect each source machine from these attacks by doing a backup, just in case. 3-2-1 strategy is to basically have multiple copies of the data. Obviously, you have your data recovery destination as a primary, but you should have an offline copy, also local, someplace just in case if that primary directory or location gets corrupted. You have now a second location on premise, and then you should always have an offline copy as far as replication or copy to tape, sending it off-site, Iron Mountain. There's a lot of resources that we can provide to have an offline, but also a remote copy in case of a whole site failure as well. With disasters, snow events, hurricanes, it's good to have the actual restore copy, a local copy, and then a replica someplace else. So that's what that 3-2-1 strategy means to avoid a single point of failure. Leveraging virtualization is another way we can sort of help mitigate some of these attacks. Using something like virtual standby, we'll take a backup and create a VM after that protection has been done. So let's imagine we took a backup 15 minutes ago. Leveraging virtual standby, we'll have a VM created so that if something goes wrong, we can easily put up that VM, and that VM will take over. So the idea is to change recovery point into a virtual disk, and so that VM is available in case of emergency. It's something that we can do. So for critical environments where you need quicker recovery time objective, using virtual environments is quite common today, and make sure that your application has the capability. Also, you may need to rethink your strategy in your organization. How critical is your data? That will lead to, what type of investment you'll need to implement. Also, your service level agreements, how often you need to protect your investments, all things you need to consider if there's an attack. Last thing we do is you go back to, a backup you had 24 hours ago, where if you did backups every 12 hours, you can see you can mitigate that risk. So, you may have to rethink, how often you're doing your backups, again, what solution you're using, and also, what you have in place. It's all links up to sort of SLAs the business and the environment requires. So these are things to think about when you create an environment and how to protect it from these attacks, is to have, obviously, a secure, have the backups, and of course, educate people in new solutions and what's available. So speaking of solutions, Arcserve has technology to prevent and restore. We have the capability to back up every 15 minutes your data. So we can provide a local presence to restore in case of any infection. So as you can see here in this diagram in the upper right-hand side, our primary site, you have your protected sources. We can have a another RPS server or backup server, again, do backups. So we're going to safeguard and keep these recovery points. Again, every 15 minutes we can have these points of time capture the data. And so if something goes wrong, we can easily recover from that local RPS. You can also see replication is also involved. So the idea of replication is to avoid that single point of failure. So replication can be proactive and replicate the data to another site or a cloud resource, whatever it may be. So this is how Arcserve UDP, whether it's software, our appliance, or our cloud, can, again, help you restore your data and, again, mitigate some of these issues that we see today when it comes to ransomware and other attacks. So let's go and discuss some cases that we have today. I have two cases to sort of understand what's out there. This case study comes from a publishing company. They actually are using Arcserve. They recently suffered an attack. File was launched via email. This was a photos.zip attachment. So a BART-type virus event occurred. Their data was compromised, but because they performed the backup, early in that day, they had a 7 a.m. snapshot. So early in that day, they had a backup. They were able to revert back to that point in time. They also kept their data offline, and so they had data due to our copy recovery point, which we'll talk about in a second. They're able to use that data to restore their systems. So this is a great case study in which Arcserve UDP was a key solution to recovering their data, and so they're able to recover not only system data but their applications as well. This company is pretty common, the attacks that they suffered, but again, with Arcserve, they're able to recover rather easily. The second case study is another company. They had several attacks occur over the year, but again, due to their SLA agreements, they're able to back up more often than not, and they're able to restore data. And so we're able to mitigate these attacks by having, again, a solution in place to do their backups. Arcserve UDP was also in place to do their backups, and so the company didn't have to pay, the thousands of dollars to recover their data. So just keep that in mind. Having security, having, these best practices are good, but having a way to recover in case something happens is even more critical. So what I would like to do is just sort of walk you through some of the ways that Arcserve UDP can protect your investment. We talked about, again, having a good backup strategy. What we're going to now discuss is how, with UDP, we can protect your investment, and again, in case you get infected, how to recover. So the first capability that we have as a solution is called Copy Recovery Point. So as you can see, we have a backup. This could be an agent or agentless backup, VMware, Hyper-V, or physical machine. Without software, it does not matter. But as a second task, we can now copy that recovery point. What this means is that after that backup is done on that primary storage, we can now perform a copy task to migrate that copy of that recovery point to now another destination. Again, we're trying to avoid a single point of failure here. And so copy recovery point, as you can see, can point to a local disk, a shared drive. It can even point to a cloud storage like Amazon, S3, Azure. There's a lot of targets that we can use from a cloud standpoint. Again, whether it's agent or agentless, we can now have a copy on now this other target in case of emergency. We can provide schedule of which backup we want to select, and we can then finally schedule when to take that recovery point copy. So again, copy recovery point is a great way to send your data offline to another resource, like offline disk. You can swap disk. So I have customers that have, a week of data on this disk, and every Monday they swap out, and they keep that other disk, someplace handy in a safe or Iron Mountain, Or again, you can utilize the cloud. S3 is a common resource with Amazon. You can also use Azure Object Connected Storage. So Object Connected Storage are storage that we can easily account for in our software, and it'll point directly to that cloud resource. There's no compute or extra cost with this. You just need that subscription service with that account, and you can easily add this into the Arcserve interface, and now we can provide that destination. So copy recovery point is a good way if you don't have, alternative solutions. If you have only local present destinations, you can utilize that as well. The second capability we'll talk about now is, again, utilizing virtual environments. So if you have VMware Hyper-V, you can use those instances as a way to sort of deflect recovery. We call this virtual standby or instant VM. As you can see, these are additional tasks you can also provide after a backup. Basically, what we're doing is we're converting the backup into a hypervisor format. We support VMware Hyper-V, and we also support Amazon EC2. So the product converts the backups after they've been done into a VM in that instance. So imagine having a powered-off VM waiting to come online on that hypervisor of choice in case of emergency. This can occur local, or it can occur remotely after replication. So you may have backup, replication, and virtual standby. Or as you can see here, I just have the first two, backup, and then the local virtual standby. So the order in which you have your task is what the solution will follow. As you can see, we can choose a hypervisor. This hypervisor will now take that backup, that recovery point, and create a VM. So again, this is a proactive way we can avoid any failures by having a VM ready to come online in case of emergency. Every detail of the hypervisors is seen here, and so we can again create the VM accordingly. How many CPU, how much processor, even how much disk and network, what network card to utilize can be attributed with this task. So virtual standby will create the VM, so in case of emergency, that VM is available. We also can support using this with EC2. So after a backup is done local, we can convert that recovery point into an EC2 account that you may already have. So utilizing, again, a hypervisor or the cloud can be useful when trying to prevent or manipulate these sort of attacks and malware that's out there today. You do need to obviously have an account, so adding it's very easy. But once you add your account name, you can now use that EC2 instance as a destination for the backup. So again, we're trying to avoid a single point of failure here, and this is how the UDP software can easily account for that. As you can see, we have the protected servers on the left-hand side. That local RPS, again, is where we're doing our backups. This is where the deduplication occurs. And obviously, if something goes wrong local, we can recover from that local RPS. But where replication or converting into the EC2 to virtual standby, again, we can use the Amazon resources as well. So consider the RPS local. You can also have an RPS in EC2. So now this replica will take on the replica data, and so this will safeguard that investment, and you can use EC2 to spin up, again, any VMs from these backups. So backup first, replication to the EC2 instance, and then we can do virtual standby to convert that session in the cloud into a working VM. So this is the capabilities we can utilize virtual standby with UDP using EC2 and EBS storage. We also can do instance virtual machine. Instance virtual machine is a little reactive. This allows you from the RPS to create the virtual disk directly on that server. A hypervisor then brokers and creates the VM. So the RPS, the virtual disk, is being used on the data store, where virtual standby, we're utilizing the hypervisor's data store. So instant VM is a reactive way where if you don't have a virtual standby created, you can easily point to a recovery point and mount the virtual disk on the RPS and have any hypervisor create the VM instantly. So instant VM is a great approach, reactive, where virtual standby is proactive. Both give you a way to use a hypervisor to create a virtual machine from a backup. Here's another case where instant VM is created. Again, the EC2 in the cloud will store the replicated recovery points. And we can now use instant VM for our Linux servers to create that resource to get that process back and running. So the RPS, you can mount data to get files and folders, but how cool it is just to create a VM and have that server up and running. And users now can point to that server and they can do what they've been doing all along rather than waiting for you to create the server, bring back the files, and then start the server. Again, this is a proactive way to have these VMs created, and this will reduce your RTO. Finally, we talked about backup. We talked about being able to recover and convert. Another way that UDP can help with ransomware and these other attacks is to give you what we call a should recovery. A should recovery is basically a test that we can do after a backup to ensure that that backup is sound. So as you can see here, after backup, we have this should recovery task. With this task, we can now safely, proactively test that data. This is going to verify that the structure, the file system, everything is in order. So this is a proactive way that automatically the product will test the data for you. We have two ways of testing data after the backup is done on the RPS. We can do what's called instant VM. As you saw earlier, using a hypervisor, we could boot up and make sure that that VM from the backup is sound. This will allow us to make sure there's no blue screens of death, making sure that that operating system is bootable. So this is what this goes through to ensure data integrity. You do need a hypervisor for this IVM method, as you can see on the right-hand side. A second way is just to check the validity of the data store, the actual file system. What we do here is we mount the recovery point and we do several checks. So this does not need compute like the IVM, but this does validate the file system. So both gives you a should recovery, giving you the capability to know, yes, my backups have not only been successfully done, but the data on the actual destination target is sound. So as you can see, I can even do a virtual standby and IVR or a should recovery in the same plan as well. So this gives us great protection to be able to spin up the machine, but also that test is done as well. As you can see, I'm choosing all my daily backups. I can now tell the solution to either do the IVM or IVD. IVD, as you can see here, we can choose a server to then mount the backups, and then this is how we test the validity of the volume system. It validates integrity, making sure that that data is sound. So IVD will mount the recovery point and run these tests, again, on a Windows server to make sure that the system is okay. IVM, on the other hand, gets a little more in the weeds here. It uses a hypervisor. It actually will boot up that VM as a VM to make sure that there's no blue screens of death. The operating system obviously comes online. So both are implemented as ways, again, to test your data, IVM and IVD. Once we choose which method of test, we can then qualify what to test. We can validate the system, run checklist. We even can add extra scripting to go further in the weeds. Let's say it's a SQL server. Let's say we want to do a SQL query on a table. We can now add that easily by command line here. So we can get a count of not only that data is successful, but we can do additional tests to give us further proof. As you can see, we can then get out email alerts and notifications. And so we can proactively, again, automatically give this test. You don't have to come in on the weekends or, do anything manual. This is all automated. So integrity testing is something that we've added, again, to keep our environment stable and making sure that the data can be safely recovered. So that's it from our Arcserve UDP perspective, backup, being assured that the data is available, and then also utilizing virtual standby or instant VM to be proactive in creating another resource outside of our environment. Other best practices to consider, and sort of concluding with this presentation is replication. Replication is a common solution in certain products. This allows you to replicate data off site. Replication provides asynchronous protection with UDP, so you can have, again, off-site location that we can replicate to. So if you're not going to do a copy recovery point or copy to tape, which our solution supports, replication is a great way to, again, avoid that single point of failure. We can replicate the data to a DR site, an MSP, or Amazon, or Azure, public or private. It doesn't not matter. You do obviously need remote resources for replication, so additional server licenses may be required. Whereas copy recovery points, you can use local resources. You can use offline media. RDX drives are pretty popular. It's kind of like the old zip drives days. USB drives are commonly used. You can use shared drives. Shared drives are great, but again, those are, resources that can also be effective onto your network share. So make sure that those environments are also secured, maybe separate VLANs, extra security. Most definitely encryption. Our product has the capability of encrypting data. We can encrypt data in flight or at rest. So encryption is another way to safeguard your data. So these are all things to keep in mind as you think about strategies for data protection and avoiding some of these malware that's out there today. One last thing, it's good to also protect the backup server. So, the backup server could be prone to disaster and infection as well. So it's a good idea to protect the backup server at all costs as well. For more information, we have Zendesk, arcserve.zendesk.com. You can click on downloads, or you can click on documents and click on our solutions guides on all these capabilities and how to create these plans and the different tasks that we can do, like the virtual standby, the should recovery. So for more information, definitely reach out to our Arcserve Zendesk site. So that's pretty much it. We talked a lot about stopping these infections from occurring. Definitely education is number one. Having a good multi-level security practice invested is number two. And then finally, the Arcserve, or a solution in place to perform a backup. Make sure that that backup, performs according to what your needs are from a RPO perspective. Make sure it has the capabilities like the virtual standby to do that 3-2-1, to keep an offline copy. Make sure it has the capability to, again, avoid that single point failure with replication. Encryption is a big thing. Make sure you can encrypt your environment. And also make sure it's easy as far as implementation and support for restore. So that's pretty much it. Hopefully this all makes sense. We now have some time for some questions, I guess. Or I guess we should probably talk about channel benefits first. I'll now pass this on. So we talk about what we have available at Ingram Micro, and then we'll lead to questions.
Thank you so much, Gary. So with that, like Gary said, there's a lot of benefits when it comes to just using Arcserve, right? And also specifically our partner program. And we'll talk about that a little bit. Now, I know that I might be sounding redundant when I say that Arcserve is all about simplicity, right? So when you think about some of the benefits of becoming a partner, now I want to list some of them for you. Now, one, which is huge, it is free to sign up. I know a lot of people like free, which is great. Not only that, but you have access to a lot of resources such as deal registrations, SPIFs, training materials, sales tools, battle card information, so you could literally better assist your customers, and much more. Now, Arcserve offers a comprehensive data protection solution to round out your product portfolio, which is honestly just another reason why Arcserve is the fastest growing provider of data protection solution in this class. The Ingram Micro value. Now, our main goal at Ingram Micro is simple, which is to remove complexity for our customers and essentially reduce cost, right? So we offer world-class logistics as well as technical support, credit, financing, a lot of resources just to help you make this the smoothest as possible transaction that you can be working with Ingram Micro. Now, in case you guys ever wonder, well, who do I contact? Who will help me with my concerns or my needs? Well, that's a great question. So when it comes to Arcserve, we have a dedicated market development team here at Ingram Micro, which consists of myself, Brian Stelmach, and Christopher Rockholt. And we also have a dedicated licensing team for any of your licensing questions and needs as well. Okay, so if you ever have any questions or needs or customers want to just get a hold of us, this is how you would do so. Now, at this point, the moment I'd like to say that you all been waiting for is the moment that we're going to ask some questions. Now, if you haven't already, please ask away and make sure to include your name with your questions just so we know who to give the credit to. Now, at this moment, Gary's going to take it away and start answering some of these questions.
Awesome. Thank you. First question, my state and local customers are interested in a solution that would protect them from ransomware. I'm here to learn about Arcserve. What leading questions should I ask? Great question. I would definitely recommend asking, more about their environment. Typically, what operating system, what virtual is to have virtual workstation, etc. And then also ask for what kind of pain points, what they have currently today, what aren't they happy with, are they looking to move away from tape? Do you have, multiple locations? So these are questions to ask. I will also then discuss, something about, their recovery time objectives, what sort of, times they want for the backups, daily, weekly, monthly, sort of understand, how frequently they're doing backups. And, this will tell you how critical their environment is. And with that gives you enough information to make a recommendation. Great question. Next. Today, most of today's backup vendors are talking about ransomware right now. How does Arcserve differentiate itself? Very, very good. As you saw in my presentation, we have a lot of capabilities, a lot of functionality to prevent from these attacks. So everyone can do backup very well, but how they do the backup is important. File level backups are sort of being displaced with image level backups today because we can do change block tracking. There's no need to back up the whole file if only a sentence has been changed. So the way we do backups, we also can do source-side global deduplication. So we have a lot of capabilities within the pod to reduce the backup time and most importantly the storage that we back up to. But additionally, we can utilize, hypervisors with virtual standby in the VM. We have a lot of capability with the cloud partners than they do. We can do real-time replication. They can't. So, we're trying to eliminate the, single point of failure. So having a solution in place and the capabilities is critical, and this is where Arcserve distinguishes itself from its other competitors. Great question. Next question. Several of the competitors have started to integrate ransomware detection with their physical appliance. Is that something that includes in the appliance? Yes, we do have Arcserve appliance, and as you saw, the software is the same as what you just saw. So within the appliance, we have the same strategy as the software. So within the appliance, we have the same capabilities of avoiding single point of failure. The assured recovery is a way to test for ransomware. That's also available in our appliances. So there's no distinction from our software and our appliance. And so they both have the capability to provide protection and to mitigate from these attacks when they occur. Does Arcserve work for mobile devices? No, we do not have anything yet for mobile devices. We only support Windows operating system, Linux operating systems, workstation operating systems, nothing for, iOS or, these other mobile devices yet. If you're hit with a ransomware attack, how long does it take? How long does it typically take to identify the attack, source, time, attack, all that? It's rather easy because the infection it's really malicious. It takes over, your files. You can see that you suffer attack. You can't access the data. As far as time, it propagates really fast depending on the type of attack. There's many types of attack. They offer different ways of affecting data. So it really depends on what type of attack it suffers. But obviously, if you have a network, these attacks can propagate rather quickly. So this is where we get at in having security to stop these attacks from spreading. Good question. Next question. Are there any references customers have that have been saved from? Oh yes, we have plenty of references. Definitely reach out to us. These case studies are available online, and also we have obviously pre-sales engineers that can discuss this, like myself. We can talk about best practice. So definitely we have resources available for you to help you and give you obviously the knowledge that you need to prevent these attacks from happening. Great question. Do they have to be all virtualized in order to use Arcserve? No. We support both physical servers. So we have a capability to deploy an agent from Arcserve. This agent could be a physical server, could be a workstation. It does not have to be all virtual. We can work with many different types of environments. We also could put an agent inside virtual guests that may have raw disk maps or pass-through disks that they can't get virtually. So that's the benefit of UDP. We give you the capability to support a broad range of servers, Windows, operating systems, etc. In the event of any size failure, how does Arcserve separate itself from competitors in terms of needing to automate backups, guarantee recovery, simple management? By far, I think Arcserve shines with all of the above. Our console is a lot easier to use. You don't need special services or complicated integration services on premise. The process is very easy to utilize. Our workflow when we're creating a plan is very simple. You have tasks and you have plans, as you saw, very easy. Just move left to right. As far as other things, the product comes with all the capabilities. There's no second guessing. All the features and functions are included depending on obviously the license. But we include a lot of capabilities that other vendors don't or lack. So keep that in mind. Arcserve UDP gives you all the capabilities that you need. It unifies, but it gives you everything you need from a solution standpoint to protect your investment. Great question. Do they have to be all? Oh, I answered that one already. Let's see anything newer. Keep the questions coming. I think we're sort of already done. But yes, UDP is a great solution. Obviously, I know I work for Arcserve, and of course I say that, but even the industry has written reports, and we've lots of documentation if you want to read on our website that compares between the vendors. So the unification, the capabilities that we have as far as the different types of plans that we can do, some of the things that I consider our benefit across the board from comparing to other vendors and competitors out there. Also, not only can we do backup, but we also can do continuous availability. So the idea is to replicate data in real time. So if you have a need for protecting critical servers, let's say server connect go down for 5 minutes, we have included a capability to do real-time replication and failover, so we can protect that critical server, as well as do backups every 15 minutes for your non-critical servers, all unified in one web-based console. So ease of use, capabilities are in there, and costs as well. We have simple licensing from socket-based licenses to per-server-based licenses, also managed capacity-based licenses. And for those that are MSPs, we also have available through Ingram subscriptions available depending on your customer's needs. We can give you an NFR key to create your own colo, and so you can start your services and protect your customers as well. So whether it's perpetual or MSP program, we have that available through Ingram today.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for that, Gary. So all the questions are in, and
Oh, cool.
I definitely first off want to, thank everyone for joining and attending on today and just learning a little bit more about this ransomware and how we can really help protect against that. Now, the moment I like to say you've all been waiting for, the winner of our $100 Amazon gift card goes to Lori Tunmer. Lori, keep an eye on your email. You'll definitely be getting some correspondence in regards to that. Again, just want to thank everyone so much for taking the time out of your afternoon to join us here today, and we hope to see you on future webinars. Thank you so much and have a great day.